Well, the polls will be closing in Wisconsin in about an hour. We'll be going live at 8 p.m. David Knight will be joining me. We're going to see what happens there in the Wisconsin primary. Will Trump hit a wall? Will Cruz see the boost he needs? And will Bernie Sanders get the win he needs, those delegates that'll help to close the race between he and Hillary? People are already saying, hey, Bernie, you can't win due to the math. Of course, we're not hearing that on the other side of the fence for those impossible odds for the GOP candidates. Now, the Republican National Committee chairman, he came out to say, you know what, listen, if you don't like the fact that it's the party that's choosing the candidate, well, sit down and get out of the party. This is their RNC chairman, Reince Priebus, and he cautioned the supporters of Donald Trump who are vocally disapproving of the GOP's delegate allocation and selection process. And once again, saying it's the party choosing the nominee for the Republican Party. If you don't like it, sit down. And he once again says he doesn't think that Trump is going to run as a third party candidate. And he adds that he expects all remaining Republican candidates to support whoever the party's nominee is. I, for one, really hope that that doesn't happen. I hope Trump gets very angry and runs a third party. And frankly, I would like to see Sanders run third party as well and just watch this whole two-party system crash and burn. So like I said, we'll be going a little bit longer tonight just to make sure that we can see that those tallies as they come in, because this is a pretty important night in Wisconsin. Now, we have finally heard today just exactly how Trump is going to make Mexico pay for that wall. He sent out a memo to the Washington Post outlining his proposal, and he threatened to cut off the flow of billions of dollars in payments that immigrants send home to the country. And so he's saying he's going to block money transfers to force Mexico to fund the border wall. And many economists say that this is vital for Mexico's economy. And Trump said he's going to do this by changing a rule under the USA Patriot Act anti-terrorism law. It'll cut off a portion of the funds sent to Mexico through money transfers, commonly known as remittances. The threat would be withdrawn if Mexico made a one-time payment of $5 to $10 billion to pay for the border wall. And after the wall is funded, then the transfer payments could continue to flow into their country year after year. Just to put it in perspective, nearly $25 billion was sent home to Mexico in 2015 alone. Donald Trump says that the majority of that amount is coming from illegal aliens, and he claims that Mexico has been taking advantage of the United States for years, and that we have been having to pay the extraordinary daily cost of a lot of the criminal activity. So here he is making his deals, doing his big deals. He says we have the moral high ground and all the leverage. So we'll have to see how that plays out. And another thing that was just announced today, and pretty interesting that it was announced today with the Wisconsin primaries, considering that Wisconsin is a blue-collar state that has seen a lot of jobs leave the state. Ford has announced plans to build a plant in Mexico. Trump's calling this an absolute disgrace. They announced they're going to be adding a new assembly plant. They'll be creating 2,800 jobs there in Mexico by 2020, and construction is expected to begin this summer. They're going to invest $1.6 billion into that facility. Donald Trump came out saying, when I'm president, we will strongly enforce trade rules against unfair foreign subsidies and impose countervailing duties to prevent egregious instances of outsourcing. And he went on to call for renegotiating NAFTA to create a fair deal for American workers. Now, something else that we've been hearing a lot about this week is the Panama Papers. Now, these were released, a treasure trove of data released on Sunday by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. And if you take a look at the website, these papers were given to some journalists about a year ago. So you can see they put together this nifty little website where you can go and look at all the little things that they've specifically chosen for you, super fancy, to disseminate these stories. And I'm sure that they'll be able to give you quote unquote bombshells every month, every couple of weeks, whenever they need to steer the news agenda. And of course, the Justice Department says, you know, we've looked at that. We're investigating whether we can pursue any prosecutions. And they say the Justice Department takes very seriously all credible allegations of high-level foreign corruption that might have a link to the U.S. or the U.S. financial system. So, yeah, Sure, they take it very seriously if it's foreign corruption, because you'll see that noticeably missing from these Panama Papers is any major U.S. players. And so Kurt Nimmo wrote an article up at Infowars.com, do a little bit of investigating on this international consortium of investigative journalists. And you can see that they are funded by the Soros and Ford Foundation, as well as a lot of other organizations. So basically, we have the financial elite hijacking this investigative journalism to specifically attack Putin, because Putin isn't even named in the Panama Papers, but the entire media is saying, oh, look at Putin, Putin's friends, and it's like his face on all the Panama Papers. He's not even named in it. And so it goes on, he's in all the headlines. So it goes on to, in the article, it talks about how these Soros Foundation, the Ford Foundation, they are behind it, but as well, the corporate media, the Guardian, BBC in the UK, they have exclusive access to the database, which you and I cannot see. So they're protecting themselves from even seeing the Western corporations' sensitive information. So you can't look at the documents which were brought up unless you have specific search terms for them. And of course, as we know, they're going to protect any of their Western partners, because as you'll recall, it's those very same corporations that own all the media that is supposedly putting out these papers. And so they're using it, of course, to push their own agenda. And let's not forget, just a couple weeks ago, a top German journalist came out admitting that most of the news the media puts out is completely fake, that they all lie for the CIA. And of course, I saw this on Vigilant Citizen this morning, how mass media is spinning the Panama Papers to the elite's advantage. Very good article. I highly recommend that you read it. But it goes on to point out that although this leak reveals a gigantic system of global corruption around the world, it curiously names very few powerful figures in the U.S., but mostly just outsiders who are part of regimes that the U.S. would like to take out. So that's a very clear the agenda that's there, while of course it doesn't name any organizations like that are involved in the Council on Foreign Relations or the Trilateral Commission, who we know are really doing these deals. So according to the website, the main countries involved: Argentina, Georgia, Iceland, Iraq, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Ukraine, Russia, China, Syria, Palestine, Greece, and a little bit of the UK. And but again, what do you expect? Because the biggest scammers in the world also happen to own the newspapers that leaked these Panama Papers. So we'll definitely have more on that. Now, John McAfee is, of course, running for U.S. president as a member of the Libertarian Party. And he says a time bomb is hidden beneath the Panama Papers, the hack of Mossack Fonseca, in terms of the certain fallout that will affect many of the wealthiest and most prominent people on the planet, is by far the largest and most damaging cyber attack on record. Mossack Fonseca is the fourth largest asset protection law firm in the world. Its cybersecurity measures were obviously lacking, but they're not alone. Studies indicate law firms are easy picking for hackers. Bloomberg's reported last year that more than 80% of U.S. law firms had already been hacked. So why are they so vulnerable? Well, think about it. All law firms have the following information in their possession: case or litigation strategy info, including settlement parameters, argument weak points, confidential client business information, attorney-client privileged communications, and other legally privileged info, client intellectual property, a range of personally identifiable information of all kinds for employees, clients, and third parties. You got health information, payment card information, including PIN numbers. So, and of course, as we all know, that there's the attorney-client privilege, so they could have all sorts of sensitive information, and this is going to be hugely damaging. And as we see, depending on who is able to have access to this information, it can be used against you politically.
I concur with your analysis, but you've gone over the much of the data dump. What is hiding there?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's hiding there, Alex, is that this is a smear campaign orchestrated by the U.S. government. There's an organization called the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists that put out this report. But what they did, I mean, there are 14,000 people who are listed in this report. None of them are Americans. There's no American politician. There's no American sports figure. There's no American actor. There's nothing. And yet we know for a fact that America probably uses these services, or American citizens, more than anybody else. And so I did some checking, Alex. I found out that the ICIJ is actually it's part of the USA Center for Public Integrity. It's funded by Soros, Ford Foundation, Carnegie, Rockefeller, W.K. Kellogg.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects, and it reports to the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, and that's financed by the U.S. government to USAID. So this whole thing is a setup. It's basically to smear. It does two things, Alex. It smears our enemies, or the government's enemies, and number two, it alerts those Americans who are actually in that database that we know who you are. And it sets up, the table for enormous potential blackmail by the U.S. government. This thing is so absurd that it's ridiculous. There's already been one casualty. The Prime Minister of Iceland resigned this morning, and I think that there's going to be more casualties. But either one of two things is happening. They will come out later with a list of U.S. citizens, and they will be selective, as you and I know. Or all these people will be blackmailed by one of our Secret Services agencies.
Well, I concur with that. You know, on Sunday I came out when I first looked at it and I said this is a blackmail operation. It's been in the news that Germany has the most infiltrated media by the CIA and by the private foundation networks. They sat on it for a year with 100 newspapers to vet who they would go after, showing they were very, very selective to clean it, just like WikiLeaks to a certain extent. And that clearly it's a way to try to bring in more international law, more regulations. It is completely selective, and just what an amazing scandal that, sure enough, you've got the story. Business Insider, Kurt Nimmo did the same research, leads right back to the Ford and Rockefeller foundations. They're the ones trying to get rid of the borders. They're the ones coming after the guns. They're the ones financing the war on police. They're the ones financing globalism. They literally are financing the fall of every nation state, the war against Russia and Ukraine, the overthrow of non-radical Muslim countries. They are the Legion of Doom. I mean, Lex Luthor, Alexander Luthor of Fantasyland, has nothing on these true supervillains. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
Well, absolutely. Like the Süddeutsche Zeitung, the South German newspaper in Munich, sat on this story for over a year. And we do, in fact, know that the German media has been, in fact, highly infiltrated by the CIA. And I'm sure that every single reporter on the International Commission, what a great title, by the way, International Commission of Investigative Journalists, I can guarantee you every single one of those are CIA. And this entire thing stinks. It really does. And it bodes ill for American citizens. I mean, and maybe you have an offshore account for totally legitimate purposes. We don't know that the Prime Minister of Iceland, for example, did not have an account for legitimate purposes.
Yeah, most of this is totally legal, and the ultra robber baron rich for 60 years act like it's evil if anybody else puts money offshore because you can't trust your government or whatever, or because it's after-tax money, and they're not talking about taking after-tax money out of our accounts. It's a normal thing. The elites wrote the book on it, but they don't want the general public or the new wealthy, the nouveau riche, to have access to it.
Right. Well, I had one myself. It was after-tax income, and I put it offshore because I didn't trust the American banking system. And you know, I had full control of it, and it was independent of whatever happened here in America, which gave me a sense of security. So there's nothing illegal about any of these things. Now, sure, many of them are used for illegal purposes, no question. But by and large, there's nothing wrong with this. And yet, when it does come out, because they've already, like you said, the Prime Minister of Iceland has resigned, and there's smear campaigns throughout the world, people are going to be terrified if the CIA says, "Look, you know, we know that you're in this database. Here's the data, but we want a favor. We want you to not."
Exactly. It's about blackmail. It's about control, and worse than that, it is about letting the public think our governments are going after corruption, going after an international football, soccer organization. over little petty stuff about who gets what deal or who gets what sponsorship, going after stuff like that while the big multinational banks run the aircraft, run the drugs, run the weapons. Fast and Furious is still going on through Mexico, out of the Marine Corps base in Arizona, to Al-Qaeda, to ISIS.
So, of course, this is why we're always saying it's completely insane to have all of your most sensitive information all on the internet, easily accessible by hackers. And as Kurt Nimmo points out, the Panama Papers do expose offshore tax havens, but what they fail to talk about is the new arrangement legalized under FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. The law makes the parking of dirty U.S. money abroad practically impossible. So where does the money go instead? It stays in the U.S. And to top it off, there's one specific firm which is spearheading the conversion of the U.S. into Panama, Rothschild. Well, stick around. We've got some special reports for you. And then David Knight and I will be in here breaking down the Wisconsin primaries.
A lot of people ask me, what is the most important area of InfoWars that runs the whole operation that is having such a big effect against the globalists? And I've said it over and over again, it is you, the listeners and the viewers, that send us the intel, the news tips, that support the broadcast, that spread the word. You are 90% of the operation or more. You don't stand beside us, you stand at the heart of InfoWars. When I talk about the people at InfoWars, from customer service, the shipping department, being just as important as our anchors, our researchers, our investigative journalists, and myself, it's absolutely true. Without this team that we've built over the last 20 plus years, we wouldn't be able to do any of what we've been doing. And that's what's so exciting, because we finally built up to a point where we now have the launch pad. Introducing AutoShip for InfoWarsLife.com, a new way to save time and money when you stock up on InfoWarsStore.com products. Again, ladies and gentlemen, when products are sold out, you're unable to get them, sometimes for months, but we hold back the products for people that have already signed up for AutoShip. When you choose AutoShip before checkout on your order at InfoWarsStore.com, we'll give you 10% off and give you guaranteed delivery of out-of-stock products that are on your AutoShip list. Plus, we're giving you free shipping on all orders above $50. Listeners have been requesting this for years because it's so easy to forget to reorder the products when you need them each month. Now it's finally here. AutoShip at InfoWarsStore.com and InfoWarsLife.com. It's easy. Go to InfoWarsStore.com, select your favorite product, click on the AutoShip, and choose how often you want us to send you another order. As you know, I coined the term 360 win, and with the new AutoShip feature at InfoWarsLife.com, it's a sure win. You add to that free shipping on orders of $50, it is a can't lose. Visit InfoWarsStore.com and save 10% off on your next InfoWars Life order by selecting AutoShip at checkout and get free shipping on all orders above $50. That's InfoWarsStore.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139.